Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for y'all. So today we're going to be covering Adamancipator once again. This is going to be our post-ban list build for Adamancipator. So no more Union Carrier in the extra deck, and no more grass in the main deck either. As you can see, well, I think I actually did already cover a 40 card Adamancipator build, and then I also covered again, maybe with 60 cards it's still fine, but yeah, no, I decided to bring back my 40 card build to show off Adamancipator now post Union Carrier. I do think a grass build is still viable, but I think honestly I slightly prefer the 40 card build. It's closer than it might seem with grass being at 2, but honestly, yeah, this one I think it's just a little bit lacking in incentive to run grass other than like maybe possibly bin Block Dragon or find it more easily. So for this deck I tried to be relatively non-greedy in terms of I wasn't really playing anything too out of the ordinary here. Yeah, I still don't know if I'm a huge fan of the Earth Hexial fusion into Naturia X Trio. It seems just a little bit extra to me, especially to try to play around like spell and trap based decks when a lot of the decks in this format are not necessarily purely monster based, but I'm thinking mostly of like Math Mech and Sword Soul. They do have searchers, but that's largely what their spell and trap cards are. They don't really need them to win. So like yes, you can cut off Signet Mining and Small World and Sword Soul Emergence, but again, I'm sure we've all had plenty of games where our opponents playing those respective decks didn't even need those cards to completely wreck us. So I'm not super up on Naturia X Trio in either ranked ladder or tournament play. Maybe in tournament play I could maybe see it a little bit more, but even then it's like, yeah, definitely not. It's definitely not bad by any means, but it's not something that I'm gonna go out of my way to play personally. So for this build I'm sticking, like I said, to mostly standard stuff. Still, of course, using the Prank-Kids engine. I did briefly consider Fansies over Dropsies. There is a merit in wanting to foolish an extra Rocksies away instead of gaining 1,000 life points, but I also think there's merit in not keeping, or rather not foolishing away your Rocksies and keeping them in the deck, and that's to potentially have more targets to hit off of your Adamancipator monsters, and it's not very uncommon at all to get the Prank-Kids monster off before you activate either Researcher or Seeker. If you start off with like Rocksies plus Supplier, for example. So yeah, the lack of Union Carrier definitely hurts, not only just because of losing access to Buster Lock, but the deck loses a little bit of Block Dragon consistency in that as well, as Block Dragon was one of the means that this deck had to search out, or rather Union Carrier was one of the means that this deck had to search out the Block Dragon. To be fair, that was at least in my experience, the less common use of it. I definitely more used Union Carrier to just stop my opponent from summoning from the extra deck, but it did also offer that slight Block Dragon searchability as well. As far as like some of the tech choices that I've got in here, it's kind of weird to call stuff like Imperm and Valor tech choices, but they're not always played in Adamancipator. Some people will go for a more monster heavy build in order to hit off of their Adamancipator excavates more often. I have done that in the past as well. Like, I'm thinking of like early Master Duel Adamancipator when people were playing like 37 monsters plus 3 seconds light. I think you could get away with that a little more when Block Dragon was at 3, but now, I personally have always preferred to play Disruption in the main deck. I think you all know by this point that's how I tend to build my decks, is to prepare for going first or second when possible. So, that said, I think now with Block Dragon at 1, it's a lot more like that you kind of have to play this way now, and not just play like 37 monster match plus 3 seconds light. Seconds light is at 2 now for some reason still, but all the same, I think even if it were at 3, that's not the thing that's keeping you back from playing 37 monsters in Adamancipator, or like mostly monsters, you know what I mean. So as far as the extra deck in this deck is actually wide open. There's a lot of flex spots in it, Herald of the Arclight being one of those. Salamangreat Almiraj is kind of a flex spot, but I would pretty much always play this card, because there are some times if you want to like normal summon Rockband Xenoguitar. Oh, Xenoguitar. I am actually playing a single copy of this in the main deck now. I know in the past I've said that for 40 card Adamancipator, I wasn't like a huge fan of the Rockband Xenoguitar, but again, with Block Dragon at 1, it does help to have like another way to potentially search it out, and all in all, it's not a terrible card, so I think I like having a single copy in the main deck at 40 cards. I wouldn't play any more than 1 if you're playing 40 cards though, but if you're playing 3, or rather if you're playing that Grass Looks Greener, a 60 card variant, then you need to be playing 3 Rockband Xenoguitar because, you know, with Block Dragon at 1, the only other thing you really want to actively mill off of Grass is Xenoguitar. But yeah, the Herald of the Arclight, like I said, is a bit of a flex spot. Almiraj is a bit of a flex spot, but again, I like it if you're playing Xenoguitar. I think you need an Almiraj because you can normal this and then send it away for Almiraj to get both the Xenoguitar effect and get it in your graveyard to banish to potentially Foolish Block Dragon as well. Let's see. Also, the Earth Charmer, I kind of consider this a flex spot, but I honestly think the more I use it, the more I think it should be just considered a mainstay of the extra deck. Just because it grabs Maxx so often that I really like having the option to kind of extend your plays for what feels like free, honestly, with Asa the Earth Charmer. And then Underworld Goddess is another free kind of tech spot in this extra deck, but I personally like it to take out the Arrival Cybers at Ignister, as well as other Towers type monsters, but the big one being Arrival Cybers. You definitely, like, it's definitely, at Ignister is definitely enough of a force in this meta that I think you need to be prepared for them in some way, shape, or form. So Underworld Goddess is this deck's way of doing that. So that is about everything I wanted to cover as far as the build itself goes. Let's go ahead, and as always as ever, I'm going to break it down card by card, and then we'll take a look at some games. So for our build, we're playing 1 Effect Veiler, 3 Maxx, 3 Doki Doki, 1 Prank-Kids Dropsies, 3 Adamancipator Seeker, 3 Adamancipator Researcher, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Gigantes, 3 Koa'ki Guardian, 1 Revival Golem, 1 Tackle Crusader, 3 Prank-Kids Rocksies, 2 Adamancipator Analyzer, 3 Koa'ki Supplier, 1 Rockband Xenoguitar, 1 Block Dragon, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Foolish Burial, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, and then 2 Infinite Impermanence. It's going to round out the main deck. Now for the extra deck, we've got 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Adamancipator Risen Raptite, 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite, 1 Baronne de Fleur, 1 Gallant Granite, 1 Salamangreat Almiraj, 1 Prank-Kids Meow-Meow-Mu, 1 Prank-Kids Dodo-Doodle-Doo, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Asa the Earth Charmer Immovable, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, 1 Accesscode Talker, and then finally, of course, 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. And that's going to round out the list. Now let's take a look at some gameplay. Our first duel for this video, we're going to be up against Runic. So definitely going to be a bit of an intense matchup when you were. I was just trying to remember if I for sure went second. Definitely a bit more intense when you're going second than when you're going first. Going first against Runic is like, you want that all day, but going second can be a bit of a yikes. Especially with a hand like this, which this hand not only doesn't have a clear path towards a combo when it goes back to my turn, because I only have Rocksies but I don't have another level 4 extender to go with it, but Maxx and Nibiru are definitely not the kind of disruption you want to be drawing against this deck specifically. So, bit of a yikes there. They're going to use the tip for the fountain, set 3 before activating Card of Demise, and then set 2 more. So, yeah, like I said, definitely not what you want to be seeing when you're up against Runic, is a play fountain and set 5 before passing back. So, to make matters worse, we end up drawing Effect Veiler of all cards. So, definitely not ideal here, but all the same, still going to try to play out of this. I'm going to start by normal summoning the Prank-Kids Rocksies here. I want to start hand cycling if possible and see if I can get something a little bit better. I'll throw out one of these Maxx's. I should throw out the Nibiru really, but yeah, we'll just end up tossing a Maxx. I mean, neither are probably going to be used, to be fair. The second Maxx or the Nibiru. Bit surprised my opponent does not have any disruption for me here. I thought for sure there can only be one was going to get flipped or something like that, but No, again, surprisingly, I'm not seeing anything. So what I'm going to do once the Dodo-Doodle-Doo and the Rocksies are on board is I'm actually going to link them away for a Knightmare Unicorn. Because at this point, it's pretty clear my opponent doesn't have a floodgate that's able to stop me from, like, you know, link climbing and making plays. I definitely think they would have flipped it up by now if they did. And I definitely want to get this Runic Fountain off of the board here. So I'm just going to see. I honestly did not expect this Knightmare Unicorn effect to resolve at all. I was like, let's just see what happens. And I actually did. I managed to put the Runic Fountain back in the deck. They've got a Slumber to keep me from dealing 2200 damage here, but that's totally fine with me. I'm not really concerned about my banishes or my mills, like, at all. That's actually a tip I have to give for the Runic matchup in general. You know, it's definitely correct to, like, take a quick glance to make sure you're not missing an essential combo piece or like a one-of, but other than that, I tend not to look at this banish pile at all when I'm playing against Runic, because it's not really about what I've lost, it's more about like what I've still got and if I can find lethal. So again, unless you're playing like a highly specific combo necessary one-of, I tend not to fret or obsess over what exactly they're banishing from my deck. Yeah, I don't really have too much of a better play than that. Gonna have to pass back to them. They're gonna use Runic Destruction to try to go for a extra deck monster and extra deck monster here. Definitely gonna fire off this Maxx in response. Even if it's only gonna get me one draw, I want that draw. It's better than the Maxx just sitting in my hand. And we actually get to make use of the Veiler to keep the Jerry from adding the Runic Fountain back to the hand. So that's nice that we're able to do that there. And they don't have any other plays, which is also very nice. So the Black Dragon draw was very good, as is this Koa'ki Supplier draw. I'm going to start by slamming down the Black Dragon and immediately going for Access Code. If possible, I want to start taking care of some of these back rows. And I do already have 3 different Link monsters with 3 different attributes in my graveyard. This will also protect the Black Dragon search and prevent them from chaining to it. Now, to be fair, that Koa'ki Supplier at the end was a little risky. It did give my opponent the opportunity to have a sort of in on this chain link, but you know, I wanted to make sure that I got the value out of Supplier as well. I think it was worth the risk. I didn't anticipate they'd really have anything that'd be able to stop me in that specific of a situation. Now here they are going to blow up my Accesscode Talker with a Flashing Fire, but that's fine. It was a lot of damage on board, but it's not needed for me to win here. Yeah, now that Researcher and Seeker have come down, yeah, it's definitely time to just like wombo combo out here. Managed to find a Xenoguitar off the Researcher, going for a Raptite. Gonna activate that Excavate effect after using the Xenoguitar effect, of course. I'm gonna bounce the Researcher back to my hand, but I don't really have any particular plan with it, so... Oh, sorry, I'm doing the Seeker Excavate next. Looks like we got a couple of different options there, either Doki Doki or the Koa'ki Guardian. Doki Doki will definitely allow for even further extending, so I think my plan here, if I recall correctly, is just to use Dragite to clear out this board. Jerry, the Runic Fangs, we do have to remember, cannot be destroyed by card effects, and then Dragite also has the ability, since I have, you know, Prank-Kids Dropsies in the graveyard, to negate the activation of spell or trap cards. So even if somehow, after all of that, one of my opponent's back rows is still live, it won't be any more. And after that, the opponent concedes as soon as Dragite hits the board. I think they realize that, you know, I'm just going to bounce their whole board back to their hand, and even if I can only bounce 1 or 2 cards, I'll just bounce the Jerry, and if the other back rows happen to be live again, I can just negate them. So, yeah, it was definitely very scary when Runic went Fountain set 5. Definitely got lucky that they didn't have any floodgates, but at the same time, I think that Knightmare Unicorn to bounce back the Runic Fountain really ended up being the key play for that duel. It looked kind of unimpressive at the time, especially to myself as I was making the play, but yeah, ultimately cinched us out very well here. So yeah, there's that game. Let's go and take a look at the next one. For our next opponent here, we're going to be playing against Mathmech. This one has a mini Salamangreat package. It's playing Balinks in the field spell, but other than that, it's relatively standard. Looks like we're going to be taking the second turn yet again, although we did open Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, so that's pretty nice. If we get the pass back to us without too much on our opponent's board, this hand is definitely looking very, very solid here. Rocksies, Researcher, Doki Doki, Foolish, these are all cards you want to open with. So the opponent's going to start off with a Signet Minding, pitching Small World. So one of the big questions I've had asked is, when do you Ash Blossom against Mathmech? And as with any matchup, it definitely varies case by case. Normally, I think the correct point to Ash Blossom, if it's like the only disruption in your hand, is probably when they go to add Almiraj. However, in this specific situation, where they used Signet Mining to throw out Small World, I thought to myself, you know, Ash on the Signet Mining is already pretty good, because if it resolves, it's an inherent +1 for me. And on top of that, they just threw out another way to search Circular. Now, they either have Circular already in their hand, or this is like, they didn't have any other good cards to discard, but they still need the Circular. I've definitely been in hands like that. So I decided to hedge here and chain the Ash Blossom, and it is ultimately going to pay off. But I don't think Ash Blossom on Signet Mining is always right, but I don't think it's necessarily like bad either. It's complicated. So they do manage to normal summon a Subtraction, going into Link Disciple, and then specialing the Parallel Exceed. I'm wondering if maybe they weren't playing Link Infraflyer, or another way to bridge Parallel Exceed into Circular, which is maybe why they pitched this Small World with Signet Mining. In any case, yeah, they're going to get the Link Disciple and Devotee line off here, so they've definitely got plays. It's not going to be, you know, as good as normal plays, but they do have some amount of plays here. Making Cyber's Wicked, but they did already normal summon the Subtraction, so they won't get to special diameter or normal diameter here, which is very good for me, because if they got to normal summon diameter, then, well, yeah, they would have had their whole setup then. They could have normal diameter, brought back Subtraction, overlaid for Almiraj, added Circular, Pitch Sigma, special itself, Almiraj effect, sack whatever is in the extra monster zone to special a Math Mech from Graveyard, special the Sigma, search Super Factorial, and then they just have their whole setup right there. So, thankfully, that's not what ended up happening. Gonna draw for turn, we draw Koa'ki Supplier. I believe was the last card, yeah. So we drew the Supplier, which is like, I mean, this is all gas. This is like literally whatever plays you want in this deck. These 5 cards right here, especially given how lackluster the response for our opponent's gonna be. I was actually expecting them to go into Appaloosa here, but was fairly surprised when they decided to go for a Mech Knight Crusader Avermax instead. Now, when it comes to Avermax, sometimes I will admit that I do tend to overplay into it. That is to say, I try a bit too hard to play around it and, you know, end up misplaying slightly in the process, and that is going to be what I ultimately end up doing here. I really should have just, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe I should have normal summoned that Doki Doki instead of the Prank-Kids Rocksies, and then that would have made it a lot easier for me to go into the Dragite. Because, you know, we can't target or destroy Mech Knight Crusader. So we're going to have to use non-targeting, non-destruction means of getting rid of it here. Although one thing you can do, which I think I was pretty sure I was just going to do when I made this Appaloosa, is I was like, you know, I could just make the access code to run over it and, like, negate the effect. And yeah, at this point, that is actually what I'm going to pretty much just exactly do here. Well, actually, first I was going to go for Baronne de Fleur, and I really should have just gone for Baron first here. There was no reason not to, but I end up going into Asa the Earth Charmer first, which is going to cost me as my opponent goes to call by and banish my Block Dragon there. So it's definitely more than a bit of a yikes. I was going to say it's a bit of a yikes, but it's definitely more than a bit of a yikes. Yeah, I just got a bit presumptuous and thought I had all the time in the world to remove this Avermax, but yeah, now I'm definitely feeling a bit more pressured to try to figure out how to go into Dragite here. So right now, my plan is to just Raptite and kind of hope I hit one of the level 2 Adamancipator tuners, which unfortunately for me, I do not. I do have hits, just not one of the excavators there. So I'm like, you know what? Like I said, you know, before, I'm like, I'm just going to go for access code anyway, and then I'll just use Appaloosa to negate the Avermax's, you know, shuffle back effect. Yeah, at this point I was really just hoping I could find exactly, or not even exactly necessarily, but just 8,000 points of damage, but unfortunately it wasn't going to happen here. I shouldn't say it was never going to happen. If I had played that hand better, it absolutely would have happened, but I think my biggest mistake really was not making the Baron first. There was no reason not to, I just wasn't thinking about it, so. Yeah, I'll battle here, and then I'll just negate. I think I said the shuffle effect earlier. I meant to say the attack gain effect. I'll just use Appaloosa to negate the attack gain. Well, I guess, hey, I'll use them to negate both effects. Yeah, that is unfortunately going to put my opponent out of lethal range, though, negating both of those effects. But to be fair, had I let that resolve, they would have been out of lethal range as well. Besides, with, only 2 cards, I don't really suspect my opponent's going to have too much here. They go for a subtraction on the Appaloosa. Obviously, I have to negate that, otherwise they just get the free summon. I don't get to negate later in the turn anyway. And here they go for the Diameter normal summon. You might be thinking like, ah, shit, now they have access to Almiraj and they're going to have a huge comeback, right? Well, if you take a look at my graveyard here, I've got Prank-Kids Dodo-Doodle-Doo in it, which is a wind attribute monster. Did you know that Raptite has a quick effect that activates if you have a wind monster in your graveyard? It lets you banish a monster from your opponent's graveyard. So, funnily enough, my opponent actually did not have the out they might have thought they had here. To be fair, I don't know. I'm not in my opponent's brain. Maybe they were just making the plays or hoping that I didn't notice the play, but no. Unfortunately, the Diameter is not going to be out here because I have exactly Raptite on board and Dodo-Doodle-Doo in the graveyard. So it was just a very funny way to cinch out that match there. Even though, again, I could have closed it out earlier had I not misplayed. But yeah, there's that duel. Let's go and take a look at the next one now. Alright, coming up next, we're up against Branded Tri-Brigade, which is a deck, I mean, you all know how much I love Tri-Brigade by this point. Sadly, did not have time to cover Branded Tri-Brigade last season. I tried to do that every season if possible, get a Tri-Brigade video in, but I did not get one in last time, unfortunately. So, this opening hand's looking great. I've got Analyzer plus Researcher plus Seeker, but I made a huge misplay right off the bat here, and that is I activated the Analyzer's effect before specialing Researcher and Seeker. Now, to be fair, it's only a misplay against exactly Psyframe Gear Gamma, but it was a misplay all the same, because as we saw, Gamma destroyed and negated my monster effect, and now I don't have a Rock or an Adamancipator to special summon either of my monsters. So, if I had played Analyzer, then specialed Researcher and Seeker, then activated Analyzer, I mean, to be fair, my opponent still would have had a live Psyframe Gear Gamma, which probably would have messed me up at some point during the turn, probably when I went to search for Gallant Granite in that scenario. But yeah, because again, I didn't think about it. I just went to activate the Analyzer before I summoned a Researcher or Seeker, and then now I can't do either. So, whoops. The small kind of silver lining here is that my opponent did have to use the Psyframe driver from hand, which is definitely not ideal for them. Now they're going to pitch the Fractal for Nerval adding Kit, normal summoning Kit, to use its effect to get a Link monster out. Definitely going to chain a Maxx to that. And it does look like my opponent's going to ultimately end up having a response. So I'm feeling pretty confident. I know that they're not really going to be able to OTK me here, which I suspect is why they went straight for the Ancient Warrior's Oath Double Dragon Lord, as opposed to something like Bearbrum or Farajit here. So I get to use this Imperm on the Double Dragon Lords before they get to really make any plays. So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, we had a rough first turn, but now we get to make a comeback here. Now I get to normal the Supplier, and then special Researcher and Seeker. My opponent's only got one face down card, and even if it does happen to be the Revolt, my opponent only has 2 Tri-Brigade monsters between their graveyard and Banish. So even if Kit was in grave, like even if I do end up sending it to the grave, they still don't have enough to make a shrine here. So I was feeling pretty good about myself, especially with this Koa'ki Mirror Guard down line. I'm feeling at this point in the game pretty well insulated against most things they could do here. I'm going to use Raptite to get out this Tackle Crusader just to make a level 4. Now, I did have to give up the Koa'ki Mirror Guardian in order to make the Gallant Granite, which definitely loses a bit of that security there. But fortunately, they didn't have a response to the Gallant Granite search, and I was able to just run out the Block Dragon all the same. Now here, I thought about potentially making Appaloosa, but I really wanted to save the Seeker plus Raptite for a Synchro. But yeah, my opponent's got a call by there, so that's definitely going to hurt. Even if I'd made Dragite, I don't have Dropsies in Graveyard, so there wouldn't have been any way around negating that. Now I'm actually going to battle before I Synchro here, because that's going to ultimately allow me to do a little bit more damage. I actually don't even remember if I Synchro here, because I could just make a 3-material Appaloosa as well. Could really make an argument either way. It looks like that actually does ultimately end up being what I do here. Because I can't really make Borreload Savage Dragon, right? Because I don't have a Link monster in graveyard. I don't really have a good way to get IP in graveyard and also still make Borreload. So, and again, I don't have a negate with Dragite, so I really don't know what else besides Appaloosa I could have made here. This could also, I mean, it definitely was a game where I misplayed, obviously, by not running out the Researcher and the Seeker before activating Analyzer, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really think there's a whole lot else I could have made in that situation. Yeah, as if this isn't bad enough, I put it, then Maxx sees me as soon as I normal summon this Rocksies. At this point, I was kind of just like, alright, I'm just gonna lose here, but let's see what we get off the Rocksies. Maybe it's enough to keep me in the duel, and that's it's Crossout Designator, which is definitely not enough to keep me in the duel. Yeah, this is also kind of a prime example of why, you know, I tend not to play into Maxx C if I don't know I have lethal. Well, I mean, here I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to lose anyway, so I'll just go for it. But in a quote-unquote regular duel, or like a regular moment in a duel, I would definitely not make a play like that to give your opponent, you know, 3, 4, 5 draws and just make a mediocre board. I think Maxx C is definitely one of those things that's all or none. You either don't play into it at all, give them literally the bare minimum number of draws and just pass, or you just like go for it and just try to OTK. There are some exceptions. If you can put up a strong board in like 2 or 3 summons, depending on the board, it can be worth it. But yeah, generally speaking, just, you know, you gotta go all or none when you're taking the Maxx C challenge. You either do or don't. Yeah, so definitely with Accesscode coming down, it's just over, and I'm just going to concede at that point. So, GG's to my opponent, Boneheimer here, which is a pretty funny name. Definitely love to see Tri-Brigade doing well in the meta. We do have one more duel to take a look at, so let's go ahead and jump straight into it. And our final game here is against Floowandereeze. It's a 50-card Floowandereeze deck, which there are some decks like Branded Despia that can more easily get away with playing like 50 cards, same with like Dragon Link and Thunder Dragon decks, but I personally don't think Floowandereeze is one of those. But in any case, we're going to go second. Opponent's going to start off with Rabina. I Ash Blossom fully expecting there to be a Magnificent Winds or a Book of Moon, but there's not actually. Joy and Rapture, our Ash Blossom against the Rabina actually resolves. They're going to set a card before passing back to us. This Koa'ki Supplier is a very nice draw with the Rocksies, but as soon as I normal summon Rocksies, the opponent's going to throw out a Dimension Shifter. Definitely not ideal, but it doesn't mean I don't have plays. I'm going to special this Researcher and see what I hit off that before determining what the rest of my turn is going to look like. I managed to find another level 4 monster, so what I'm going to do here is just sync for Baronne, blow up the back row, run over Rabina, and then pass to my opponent. I don't think, you know, my opponent doesn't have any more plays. It's not very likely anyway, with only 3 cards, and even if they do have an Omni Negate, so even if they've got like an Eaglin or Rabina or something, I'll just negate and destroy it, and that's pretty much going to be over. So the Dimension Shifter, that definitely looks like, you know, an auto-win card against this deck. Like, there isn't really a whole lot I can set up if I don't have a graveyard, that is true, but it doesn't mean the deck had absolutely 0 plays, and in this circumstance, I think Baronne de Fleur by itself is going to be enough. So, opponent's going to normal summon a Toucan, trying to add the Rabina back with its effect. But I'm just going to negate the Toucan effect. They're going to get the Rabina back anyway because of Rabina's effect, but they're not going to have another normal summon, which is going to be the most important part. And those last 2 cards didn't really do anything last turn, so I don't suspect they'll do a whole lot this turn or the next one. And sure enough, they don't. Our opponent's just going to concede right then and there and give us the win. So there are those games. Hope you all enjoyed those. Now let's go ahead and move on to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.